Welcome to a special edition of PHNX Sports. We're doing a G-rated segment, which we haven't done in forever. I feel like I've been watching all these movies and shows, and now I have people that are watching them with me.
Yes.
Today we are talking about Andor, so if you have not watched the season finale and don't want anything spoiled,
Get out.
please tune out now, because we're going to dive into all of it. I'm here with Leah, Merrall, Derek Montilla, and Craig Morgan, and it's nice because we don't normally get get to do shows together.
Yeah,
so
I don't think I've
This is
ever
the
been
first.
part of this selection of people.
Right.
It's weird to have you so far away.
I know. Good. Keep them away.
Can't really make out who you are, actually.
Yes, so this is great. I'm excited. Let's dive right in. Season finale. Overall thoughts. Craig, let's start with you.
Blown away.
Yes.
Blown away as I have been by this entire series. I keep saying this. We've talked about this on the PHNX Kitey show, but Andor is adult Star Wars, in my opinion, in every way. I've had issues with past incarnations of Star Wars, mostly because I'm a writer and I thought a lot of the writing was bad.
Yes.
And there's a lot of bad acting, let's be honest, about
For
past
sure.
Star Wars as well. This is on point. Fantastic writing, fantastic characters, fantastic acting. Just great stories. I'm loving it.
And when it comes to the finale specifically, I think it's like the show itself. It's like I wasn't expecting much out of the show when it was announced and when it started, and I've just been enthralled by every minute of it. And the season finale just found a way to make all of these storylines that are kind of coming to a head, not only like as compelling as we thought it would be, but just this insanely dramatic moment about the spark of the start of the rebellion that I wasn't really expecting to see, considering we know that there's another season of this show, but I think it was a perfect way to end the first season.
Yeah, I think as far as finales go, finales are tricky. Everybody has high hopes. Sometimes they don't do enough. Sometimes they do too much. I feel like this was kind of the perfect ending to this season, still leaving enough that you want to watch the next season. They tied up some ends while opening others. So I think that's what it did a really good job in. And as far as finales go, it's one of the better ones that I've seen.
It is. And I loved this show because it hit so many different peaks without ever diving into valleys. And the finale felt like, I don't think it hit the peak as like the prison break or, the robbery. Like those were incredible episodes, but it ended things or at least the first season, in a really nice way. And I appreciate Tony Gilroy for the way he attacked this, because not only is it a prequel, which is difficult to do when you already know the predetermined fate of some characters, but it's in between like one trilogy and another. So it's not only the things that came before that are predetermined, but after as well. And they introduce so many characters that you actually care about, like Marva.
Yeah, right. And I was going to say, but they do a good job of like Cassius, like, even though we know his fate, right? They do a good job with the finale of still giving you that moment, that last cliffhanger that you don't know what's going to happen next. And now we have to wait entirely too long to find out. But still, it's honestly the feeling that this show gave us week to week, which was what made it so much fun to watch.
You mentioned cliffhangers, and a lot of series will do that with the finale of a season. It's a cliffhanger like, oh my God, I can't really have to wait a whole year to find out. You sort of knew what was coming here. You knew something was going to pull Cassian Andor in to the rebellion. So in that way, it was predictable, but it didn't matter. You still want to know what's coming. First of all, how did it happen? It didn't happen the way I thought it was going to happen. I thought Stellan Skarsgård's character was going to die at the end of this series. I was really convinced of that. But then it doesn't matter that he's in the rebellion now, because, okay, where does the story go from here? It's a fantastic story.
Yeah. And there's still years to fill in between now and his first scene in Rogue One. And I think the other thing about it too, and I saw this online, somebody said like one of his first scenes in Rogue One, so Rogue One spoilers too, but he kills like a mole who gives him information, and you think, oh my God, like that's so aggressive almost.
Right.
But when you kind of see his character and the decision he makes over the course of the season, it's like, okay, that actually kind of makes sense.
Tracks for his
it tracks.
personality,
It definitely tracks for his personality.
Well, and that's another beautiful arc over the season, is how this journey changed him into this person that, he wasn't in the beginning, right? He was kind of this self-serving person that, like, you got the vibe from a lot of his friends and a lot of his acquaintances that he kind of like sleeps on a lot of couches, you know what I mean? Like, he's not exactly chipping in at times, but I mean, it was just, that's kind of the change to from there to where he became one of the most important people as far as the rebellion goes. I still find this all just to be so amazing that it's still such a small portion of the Star Wars story when you consider, you know, Rogue One and the end game there and how what the story overall is telling. But I think the entertainment that we're getting out of watching these characters and seeing them develop and how they became who they are is what makes this show so unexpectedly good to me. Like I didn't know what it was going to be, and I didn't really care for it because again, this guy isn't, you know, it's not Luke Skywalker, it's not Han Solo, it's not a character that like, oh wow, I really want to know how, you know, Lando got to, you know, be who he was or whatever. All these other stories that they've told, this one actually has just been
very narrow
so,
and focused.
Yeah, focused. But
that's the beauty of good writing.
Right. And that's like the writing, the cinematography in this show were all incredible. But for me, the grounded storytelling and focusing in, because so often, like you're saying, with Star Wars, we get the big names, we get the Skywalker family, we get the major players, but we rarely see how the Empire's tyranny impacts the day-to-day life of people that just live in this massive galaxy. And so I liked that it took that approach of like, there's not going to be lightsabers or force powers in this. It's going to be a more grounded story. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be based on not just Diego Luna's character, who you know, but all these other characters that put him on this journey, this creation of rebel scum, as they would be called later.
And also to that point, it's like obviously the main overarching villain is the Empire, and it's always the Empire. But in terms of like, you know, Deidre and the whole all of that whole group, yes, they're working for the Empire, but really it's like she wants to impress her boss. Like they're just, it's like office politics. So even though, yes, they're all for the dark side, the bad side, it's like she's not even really a villain per se. So it's not like, oh, you know, the Sith with their red lightsabers, like a clear villain that you can see. It's fighting against, you know, the powers in charge that are oppressing everyday people.
Right. It's like bureaucratic fascism.
Right.
Is scarier than that.
If you would have told me that I was going to be this excited and entertained by a show about how the rebellion was financed and, and basically how the Empire like abused their power to get where they were at and kind of, you know, like I just think it's very bureaucratic. You know, it's like how they use slave labor in their prisons in order to build weapons and get to the point that they were at. And like when you talk about storytelling, I can't believe how incredibly entertaining or at least it like how much I wondered about what this thing was that they were building in the prison, right? And like they didn't tell you, they didn't feel a need to tell you. They knew you wondered, and they were gonna make that something that you wondered about, not just until the end of one episode, but until the very end of the credits of the first season.
And a lot of people, like 50% of us, didn't watch that.
That's right.
Until right before we started
There
recording.
is a post-credit scene after the finale, and you need to see it because even though we all knew to a degree what they were building, it was still just so satisfying once again for them to make you wonder and then to have that answer at the end of the season.
And the irony.
And the irony, right? And the irony of it being what it is that they were building.
I love that they brought in some big name actors and actresses in this show as well, which adds to it. Again, we've talked a lot about writing, but great acting will carry it. Diego Luna's obviously been amazing, but to have Stellan Skarsgård to bring, I don't know how much you guys have watched these other shows. Fiona Shaw I saw on Killing Eve. Fantastic in that role. Forrest Whitaker, who was, if you've ever seen The Last King of Scotland, his performance as Idi Amin is terrifying and so good. They have great acting in this series. It's so nice
Andy
to
Serkis.
see. Andy Serkis.
Oh, yeah.
Is he going to come back as like, we don't know what
know.
happened.
We don't know
what
back as
happened
Gollum?
Yeah, we don't know.
Space Gollum.
Well, and there's Cyril Karn, whose story is, like you said, it's like one of those stories that it's this overarching season, right? Where he is like this.
Say it, Leah.
Say it.
What?
He has mommy issues.
He definitely has mommy issues, right? But like again, like you said, you get this feeling that he is going to be maybe this bigger villain in season 2, but they took the time to tell his story from the beginning, which I loved. You know, the very first, you know, when he got in trouble for trying to be too much of a Boy Scout, and his, you know, supervisor who's been there and done this before was like, nah, these guys got involved with the wrong person. Let's just make them seem kind of heroic and let's like sweep this under the rug. And instead it brought all of this down upon them for him, you know, for him following Cassius and doing everything, or Cassian, everything that he did.
Well, yeah, and it shouldn't be as interesting as it is, but again, that's the power of good writing and storytelling. Like, this guy literally spends the majority of his show giving shitty, uninspired motivational speeches and being berated by his mother.
Yeah.
And it's still like, you kind of care about where his character is going to end up. And you mentioned Fiona Shaw as Marva. She was kind of the highlight of the season finale for me, the speech that she gave in the square.
There were like a number of unreal speeches in this episode. That and then the manifesto that he was listening to. I was inspired by that.
Right.
Can I ask what Cyril was eating, by the way? Was it cereal? Was it
With
Trix?
blue milk?
It looked like,
I don't know.
Yeah, it looked like Trix, kind of like space Trix.
You could probably.
You'll get it soon enough at Disneyland.
Yeah, I was gonna say at the cantina and Star Wars World.
Complete with someone dressed up as his mother yelling at
you.
That costs $15 extra, but yes, we can get that.
Let's talk about your favorite moments of the finale. For me, it was the Fiona Shaw speech. It was that whole scene. The explosion was obviously really cool, but what kind of took the center stage for you guys?
That for me, that's it. I hate to say ditto, but that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about the spark of the rebellion, here we go. It was a powerful speech. It was a Newt Rockney speech.
Yeah,
let's go.
For me, it was the tension set up by the marching band prior to that moment.
That was great,
too.
Right? Like, just the way that you see the Empire setting up to block them in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, nothing's gone down yet, but it's like your standard street fair where the police have to get ready just in case something goes down. But like, that tension started to build, and the music was such a big part of that moment. And like, I don't know, like, the speech was incredible, but again, it's that feeling of, it's about to pop off,
right?
But it's like, it's not there
how's
yet.
How's it gonna happen, right?
Yeah. And you see the soldiers talking, and they're like, "Oh, we capped it at 40 people, and we pushed their time back." And then all of a sudden it starts, and you're like, "Okay, this looks like 30 people," and then they start walking, and you're like, "This is not 30 people."
Right.
And they clearly don't give a shit about what what rules they set in place. And you're right, the music, and then they stop, and then the change in the music to that more fast pace, and you're like, it gets your heart pounding in your chest. So I just feel like that whole funeral procession up until the point where the kid throws the bomb, and like, shout out to that actor too for this being so unbelievable. It was just everything. As I was watching it, I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
And even when he was building the bomb, like,
I was like, what is this?
You kind of knew it was a bomb, but it was so compelling to watch him build it and wonder what he was building and where this was going to go.
And what role that was going to play in the episode.
That's what I love about this show more than anything, is this show unapologetically doesn't give a shit if you are following along or not. They're not trying to spoon feed you anything. They're not trying to make sure you caught everybody's name. They're not trying to lay the plot down so that everybody can figure it out. It is a show that some people are going to miss some things, and that kind of, in my opinion, makes it rewatchable, so that you go back and you might catch something that you missed the last time, or something might make more sense if you watched the whole season and you're rewatching it again. They just made a show, like you said in the beginning of this, is for adults. Like, and again, they don't care if you've seen. They're not like, I'm surprised that they even put the last episode kind of thing at the beginning of each episode, because again, I don't feel like they're like, if you didn't watch it, go back and watch it and then catch up to where we're at, because they're moving on and they're telling a great story without needing to make it like simplified or dumb it down too much for people that might not be following it.
Tell the truth. Did you guys want Cyril to kiss Deidre in that really awful scene?
I wanted her to kiss him. I really wanted her to go for it.
Unexpected.
That whole scene, I felt so uncomfortable.
I was like, it's giving Oedipus vibes. I don't like this. But no, you're right. Like, it's a great show that's set within Star Wars, and to this point, we've had to tolerate decent or good shows, or some bad shows that are Star Wars shows. This was more, we're focusing on being a great story, a great show, and it just so happens to be set within the Star Wars universe. And when we got those dashes of Star Wars sprinkled in, like a TIE fighter flying in, or that incredible Luthen, that incredible Luthen 360 he did with where his spaceship turned into a lightsaber. Like, that was just nuts.
That entire like him pretending like he's a simple farmer or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's like they just made a way to make all of those scenes like kick ass, and like it's very satisfying to watch the robbery. You know what I mean? Like the way that goes down. the setting and everything that played into it, the festival that was going on, that they like set it under. It had the feel of like of an old heist film or something. You know what I mean? Like there was just a lot. To me, there were a lot of different components that the season went in a lot of different directions. You know, once he went to prison, you know, there was that entire period of time that felt like forever.
Felt like three little like stories in one, because there was the story of the heist, and then there was him in prison, and then there was this. It kind of came together with Marva's funeral, so it was like three separate little things, but all of them came together to just, you know, chip away at his outlook and turn him into a rebel.
Yeah, like Gerald said, still tethered to the Star Wars, staying true to Star Wars. It wasn't. There were a lot of points where you're like, you wouldn't know that you're watching a Star Wars series, but it did stay tethered in some ways. True enough.
Well, and I love The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian is a show set in the Star Wars universe that's good, and I thought it was one of the best storytelling. I thought it was one of the best things they did outside of the original trilogy until this, right?
Right.
I think the difference with this though is the connection to the overall story, right? The connection to the main trilogy and how this fits in is that I think that's what sets it apart. Not only is it a better show than The Mandalorian, but that's what makes the story feel that much more important than The Mandalorian.
Right. Mando is still going to be like their flagship show just because of its connections to all these different characters and the way it's pulled in characters from all across the start, like Ahsoka and all these different things. Like, it's still going to be people's favorite. And honestly, it might still be my favorite, but I know for a fact Andor is the better show. Yeah. Like, it's just a different playing field in terms of quality.
I have very specific gripes with The Mandalorian.
We'll have to get into that next year, then probably when the new season comes out.
Season 3.
Yes.
This reiterates for me that people that have been watching Star Wars and have grown up with Star Wars are far better at making Star Wars content than at this point George Lucas could ever be, right? And it was a feeling I got the first time I watched the Clone Wars cartoon, where I wasn't expecting a lot out of it, and then I was like, holy shit, this is actually really good.
Right.
Like, this is incredibly good. And these guys making it know Star Wars. And of course, a lot of those people involved with the Clone Wars are now involved with making these Star Wars shows. So it just shows, you know, that there are these filmmakers that really appreciate and love this content and want to make incredible, you know, as good as they can make it. This is probably the peak of someone taking George Lucas's original vision and making new content with it.
And it's exciting that there's the possibility to explore better new stories with different filmmakers within the universe in different corners of it, because it's so massive. Like, there's no limit on what you can come up with, the stories you can create. Like, it should be a giant sandbox. It shouldn't be this confined thing that's always dealing with one family. I did want to move on to quibbles and criticisms, if you guys have any with this show. But before I do have to shout out the line, "Tell him I love him more than anything he could ever do wrong," because that was another kind of benchmark moment in this season finale that sunk in. But do we have any qualms with the season finale or the show in general?
That it ended?
Yeah. That it ended where it did, and it left me like literally mouth agape, not understanding how they could end it right there. But also left with the perfect feeling about that show. Like, I can't wait to see what happens next, which is what they did to us all season long.
Yeah, I've got nothing.
Got nothing.
You know what? I
really do.
I have a couple.
Well, here, I'll let you get to your real ones, but I need a friend like Brasso, and I think everybody does. I don't have one. Maybe Tim Agnew might be the closest thing, but I mean, this guy was like, everybody needs a friend that the minute you come up and say, make up a story as to where I was last night, and he instantly jumps in with you and does it and is like, yeah, you were at my house. We got in a fight. You said that my alcohol sucked and all of that. But then also the kind of guy that's going to give you the biggest hug ever after your mom died. Like, just everything about that man was incredible. And I'm upset that I don't have a friend like that.
And hit a stormtrooper with the brick of your dead mother.
And Marva would probably
kick it off. Marva's brick.
So I think my biggest things, and these are things that could be tackled in season 2, I don't know, we'll see, but there were a couple of things that I felt weren't handled perfect. Like, so the Anto Krieger thing was built up as something that we should care about, even though he's a character we saw literally just a holographic image of, and that was it. We never met him. So for that to happen kind of off screen after they spent a decent amount of time with Luthen and Forrest Whitaker's character talking about the sacrifices they have to make, it felt like that could have paid off that particular storyline better. And I know they held the funeral early in the season finale, but it did seem like the Empire was oddly unprepared for a group of people that were marching down. It was giving me like V for Vendetta vibes, and I appreciated that about it. But I don't like, how did Deidre wind up that close to the action and get taken away and have to be saved by Mama's boy? You know, like that was one thing that I was kind of turning my head a little bit about. And then the other thing is just the fact that you gathered all of these characters into one setting for this season finale. Like, it's this game of mousetrap of who's going to get like Luthen's trying to kill Cassian, the Empire's trying to capture him. You've got Bix. He's able to break into this prison amidst the chaos and break her out, and only comes into contact with like one guard. There were just a couple of things that like we didn't see a lot of the characters interacting that I thought we would. Like Vel and Cinta were given basically nothing to do other than just kind of watch and then flee. Like, did anyone else pick up on these things, or am I just being hypercritical?
No, I think part of the problem too is like going back to the prison, when they broke out of prison, right? There were a lot of discussions about like the number of guards and all that kind of stuff, right? And we didn't really get that here. And I think you're right to a degree. Really, the one gripe I would say is that I felt like the Empire was so consumed with setting this trap and capturing Cassian that's the reason why that they weren't really
they let Marva's ghost speak about rebellion.
Right. And like literally get them all amped up.
Could have been arrogance, though, not even thinking that would happen. No one would
be. They think that they have the Iron Fist, and they don't expect a bunch of civilians to be able to have that sort of impact.
Especially when they're not armed or anything. They literally just started shoving them around and throwing rocks and stuff.
You brought up the line by Marva that you loved, but one of the lines that stood out for me was from the what's it called, the manifesto.
Yes.
When he said like every like small insurrection moves our line forward, because it's not a war in the sense that it's like, you know, it's not two sides going like against each other. It's, you know, a bunch of insurrections. It's a rebellion. That's why they're called rebels, because it's small little things. So what happened on Ferrix when they started fighting back against, you know, the army or whatever, that was you're like, okay, this is an insurrection. And even though, like, yes, it allowed certain characters to escape, and who knows what's going to happen. Maybe we'll see it in season 2. Maybe we won't on Ferrix. Like, that's moving the line of the rebellion.
Yeah, that's the flashpoint, right?
Yeah.
And that's again, going back to what I felt about the Empire. I just didn't think they were expecting it. I think they were so arrogant and never believed that someone would actually challenge.
That does track, because there was a lot of talk during the prison scenes about, you think anybody's listening? Like, nobody's listening. So that does fit in line.
And I just to add in, I think it just shows like that even with no weapons, that this small group of people could take on the Empire. Like, just that gives you the idea that like, well, wait, hold on, maybe if we were armed and a little bit more well prepared, like they didn't seem to be able to, you know, put their thumb on us as much as possible, right?
Until they build that Death Star.
Until they build that Death Star, right?
Absolutely. Any other random things that you guys want to shout out before we get to our final rating? Go ahead, Leah.
Oh, okay. So there was the scene where Mothma's in the car with her husband, and she starts like yelling at him about gambling, and the driver's clearly listening in, and then you see, you know, he reports back, which she has already suspected that he's listening in on her. Right. And I didn't pick up on this until I went on Reddit. Shout out Reddit. But people were saying that she was, and this makes so much sense, specifically doing that so that they can, any, you know, misplaced finances they can attribute to his gambling.
Classic misdirection.
I didn't pick up on that as I was watching it. I just thought she hates her husband, which I think she still does.
Both could be true.
Yes, both could be true. But that was just like such a baller move by her to do. And it was, and then you also can't tell if he's in on it or not. I don't think that he is, but you know, it was so well thought out.
His reaction is going to be to say he didn't do it, no matter if he did it or not. So like you said, it laid the groundwork for the spy to bring that information back.
Yeah, I love that.
But then you also have her giving up her daughter there at the end of the episode.
Is she giving her up, or is it just, you know?
I don't know.
That was creepy too.
But the daughter is super into that.
Yeah. it was like space Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
she was.
Like,
Yeah,
that
they
whole
talked
plot
about
line.
her being.
And I
her faith
wonder
is
how much it is her rebelling against her own mom, but
Mhm.
maybe
Right.
she was thinking if she's at least open to this anyway, like, let me make the introduction.
Can we talk
Right.
about the mobster's wife's hairdo, by the way? That was like Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Going on.
Yeah.
Remember that? That was bizarre. That's
Yeah.
my comment, sorry.
One thing I do want to say and give a shout out to is the fact that they did do such a good job of bringing all of these films and all this stuff together, because when we saw in the prequels, like some of the bad special effects and everything had to be on a green screen, you know, like they actually made Coruscant look like that from the prequels, right? And they still had them dressed in kind of the weird ways that they dressed as like this weird, like upper echelon Renaissance kind of people, right? Like the higher class people dressed in this like almost like, you know, kings and queens kind of way, right? So I like the way that they bridged some of the stuff from the prequels that, you know, it wasn't the best, but like they're still making it part of the story and they're bringing it all together by having it look something like that and having the people, you know, dress similar. And I like that.
They had these customs that felt lived in, you know, her husband's like out here trying to make Trenja look great again. Like there's all these different feels to it. And Mon Mothma didn't technically have a ton to do this season, but they really made the most of it and made it count. I do want to shout out the score as well, because the music was a huge part of this. And typically when you think Star Wars music, you think John Williams and you think but like this was really not just understated, but it fit with everything that was happening and it built the tension in a way that we don't often see in Star Wars.
Oh, it was incredible. Some of the songs were very unexpected, or some of the background music was very unexpected, but like you said, very appropriate for the scenes, and it really made you feel the tension in so many of the scenes.
Craig, anything you want to shout out
that
we haven't covered?
Great talked about my space tricks already, so I'm good.
It's just, to me, it's awesome that a lot of people spent time debating which fantasy show was better between, you know, the Lord of the Rings show and House of the Dragon. And for me, Star Wars wound up surpassing them both. I was not expecting that.
Yeah. I wasn't either.
That's
I think
a tough one for me.
I think that there might have been a lot of pressure on telling, you know, Obi-Wan's story or some of these other stories, but considering the freedom that they had to just make this, you know, a story that told these little corners of the rebellion versus the Empire story that we don't know, I thought that's what made it, you know, so good. And I just wasn't expecting that.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the follow-ups. You're not talking about like the Lord of the Rings, the original. I
Oh, no,
what you were saying.
no.
Yeah, he's talking about
Yeah,
the
it's
show.
This is the best.
Right.
This is the best, without question.
So yeah, well, I'm sad we have to wait 2 years for the follow-up
Yes.
season. We have a lot
There's
of
a complaint I have right there.
there's a lot of
When
hanging
does the
threads.
Mandalorian come out?
I think next year,
Yeah.
2023. So it should
we
be.
don't know when.
I don't think we know when. I think it's
Cool.
Q1,
Then we can talk about
Q2.
putting a mask on Pedro Pascal, who was a very demonstrative actor. And we don't get to
Yes,
see any of it.
Okay,
He's wearing a mask. That's
we're
one
getting
of
into
my
Mando qualms.
Anyway.
Okay, good to know. But yeah, we have to wait. So we have to, you know, figure out, is Kino still alive next season? We have to wonder, are they ever going to go back to Cassian's like origin story? Because they kind of put that in the first 3 episodes and then just kind of dropped it. And I think in Rogue One, he says something to the effect of, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. So is there more mystery to unravel there? Or is that what we're
And
going to
also, the first episode, he's looking for his sister.
Where's
And
his sister?
nothing
And then
about
she
the
never
sister.
comes up. Well, she comes up again because I think
He
Marva
took-
tells him to stop.
Mhm.
But that is a thread in the back of my mind. And I'm like, that thread's not done. Like,
Right.
they
No.
have to come back to that next season.
Right.
And he was getting information on her. And I kind of thought, oh, maybe the season will be about him looking for his sister.
Right.
Like, I didn't know. So that's
and-
on my
Yeah.
mind.
And Mama's Boy has got a factor in here. As
Oh,
being,
he
Right.
did.
Oh, yeah.
like,
Is he
the
going to get with
nemesis,
Deidre?
right?
Is he going to get with his
Oh,
mom?
boy.
Like, what's going to happen? We don't know. But
Signing off now.
But before we wrap up, final score out of 10. We're going to do this for all G-rateds moving forward. Leah.
Oh my gosh, me first. I'm going to say 9 because 10 is just like perfection, but 9 is
Closest
very
thing.
close.
Yeah.
The closest thing.
Derek?
I'm going to blow Craig's mind and give it a 10.
There we go.
I know it's very high to do that, but I can't think of a show that I've enjoyed this much. And I have to say that like the Disney Plus format of dropping a show like this week by week instead of dumping it all really added to the enjoyment of watching
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
I
Like
love
there's
it.
people that are going to go binge watch this and yeah, they're going to have a good time watching it, but there's something to be said about the wonder from week to week as to what was going on and what we were going to see next. And now we get to stick with that wonder for this entire time off until season 2.
I'm going to give it a 9 as well. Things that I wonder, do we have you mentioned searching for a sister. Do we have a Luke and Leia kind of thing going on there?
Oh, no.
And are we going to have
is Bix his sister and he had a romantic relationship?
Oh, no. Oh, wow. I didn't go there.
I didn't even think of that. I didn't think of the Bix possibility.
The other thing is, do we have
I don't think so.
Do we have an Obi-Wan and Luke thing going on with Stellan Skarsgård's character? And is he going to, again, I thought he was going to die. So
he's definitely going to die at some point.
Yeah,
I want to just shout out to that scene where he's standing at the top overlooking the city, and like when everything started, all the uprising and the look on his face. Like, he's kind of was the one who like pushed the first domino, but he's that one speech he gave the spy where he was like, I hate that this is the role I have to play, the decisions I have to make, but like this is what it is. And that's the look on his face. It wasn't one of satisfaction we did it. It was one of pain and regret and like also happy. Like it was just, that's where the acting comes in, because it was just such a complex moment for him.
Right.
And I had to bring that up too.
And any cast where we're shouting out like all these different characters and like Diego Luna kind of flies completely under the radar is pretty impressive. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 as well. I think it's one of the better shows that I've watched in a while. And like you were saying, Derek, I wasn't particularly high or excited about this show when it was first announced. I thought it was
Why'd you watch
an interesting stab. I saw the trailer and I saw that the guy that did Rogue One would be involved with it. And I said, you know what? I watch anything Star Wars anyway.
Okay.
So I was always going to give it a chance, but I wasn't excited about it. And then I started watching it and I was like, holy shit, this is the best Star Wars show that there is.
And the trailer, thinking back on it now and what we've seen, the trailer was so perfect. And it didn't give you much to go on. It didn't tell much of the story, but it was the guy hitting the gong and all these people looking for Cassian, and it was enough to get you at least interested in it. But once you watch that first episode, it's hard not to be hooked.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we got to do this finally. We'll be doing more G-rateds going forward, talking about new movies and TV shows as they come out. You can follow Leah at Leah Merrall. You can follow Derek at cap_caveman with a K.
That's right.
You can follow Craig at Craig S. Morgan. And you can follow me at Gerald Bourguet. That's going to do it for this G-rated. Tune in next time. Thanks.